ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the right time. My name is Bomani Jones. Thanks for listening wherever you get your podcast. Rate us, review us, give us 5 stars. You only give us 4 stars, I'm inclined to believe you are a hater. Joining us this week is when we do guests. He is the host of Slow Burn 6. His name is Joel Anderson, and I have to say, Joel from Missouri City has been a little cocky with this because we had to tape this a day early, and so it is Tuesday, and he brought that Astros hat out, even though it is entirely possible that by the time the people see this, the Astros might be eliminated.
Did you say you're from Houston? Or?
Yeah, I'm from Houston.
Really? And so there's a World Series going on. There's a Houston team in it, right? Gonna be playing at home, and so who are you rooting for again?
Oh, the Braves, no question. As it's been since the year 1986, and we moved to Houston in 1987.
Just proving, like I've always said, that the North Side isn't really Houston, but that's fair. Okay.
Oh, okay. That's where we go. That's what we going with. Okay. I see you got your Fired Coach University hoodie on there.
Hey,
shout out to the Fired Frog, Gary Patterson.
Every school has an attraction. We have a fired frog with a statue. Y'all got a petting zoo down there in Austin. So,
dude, I don't even know what we could talk about associated with what's going on around the Texas Longhorn football program right now. And you know why I don't know if we can talk about it? Because I haven't seen any definitive report about whether or not this monkey actually harm somebody. Because once we find out if the monkey actually did something to somebody, now it's all wide open. We can talk about whatever, but as things stands right now, I need to know, did that monkey really almost devour a child?
I mean, yeah, is there not an incident report? You'd think there'd be something like somebody would have had to call somebody if what is alleged the monkey did to a small child actually happened, right? Somebody could put in some paperwork.
Yeah, I just need to know, speaking of paperwork, they got a permit for that monkey? I just don't believe that you can just have a monkey up in your crib. That's just not, that can't be it.
It's Texas, man. I mean, you can carry a gun wherever you want.
That's true. But you know why you can carry a gun? In case you got to shoot somebody's monkey. And I'm they apparently got this monkey. What do you do with the monkey when you go out of town? There ain't no monkey kennels.
Man, yeah, you can't take it to PetSmart or nothing like that. I assume that monkey, the young lady appears to have a road show. So I imagine that where she goes, the monkey goes.
How you get the monkey there? Are you allowed to take a monkey on a plane?
Man, that's another good question. What kind of salary do you think a special teams coach at the University of Texas makes?
I have been told that his salary is actually pretty significant. I think that he is kind of way up on the special teams coach pecking order.
But you can probably afford, monkey storage. That I imagine if you got to do it. If you fly in United or Delta, he probably can. If somebody can pay for it, he's in that class of people that could pay for it. If the pole assassin wants to make that happen.
Dude, I spent so much of Monday night looking up the pole assassin and the monkey. And if you don't know what we're talking about, just Google pole assassin. And I think that'll get you to the bottom of where this is. Because you know where this is really bad for Texas? This is what happens when you got 2 rivals. You know what I'm saying? Because you got the Aggies digging up the story, and then you got the Sooners to come dance on you when you got a story that involves a special teams coach, a monkey, and the pole assassin, who has been on Jerry Springer as
it seems like multiple times, right? There's not just one. I feel like there's couple appearances. I feel like she was a repeat guest.
I did not know.
You saw the show. You know what I'm saying? It seemed like that's something. He was very impressed, according to the tweet that we were sharing the other night. So I assume,
why not,
she's a special guest. Yeah, bring her back. Right.
I mean, she possesses an incredible amount of core strength. If there's anything that I saw from that, her core strength is strong. There's no disputing that. I didn't know that the Jerry Springer show was still in the league.
Me either. I mean, I was watching Jerry Springer 25 years ago. So, I mean, that's got to be one of the longest running shows on TV, right?
Dude,
I mean,
there was a 18-month period where I don't know why, but the Jerry Springer show was the number one thing in television. I want to say Springer came on at 4 because we would watch Springer and then we go to the calf at 5 to get dinner because we were at that age where we ate all the time. So like 5 o'clock come around and we need food. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And we would watch Springer. And I just remember, to me, it just felt like the most absurd day of my life. Like, I don't know what the topic was on Springer, one of the 5, because they only got like 5 like different topics, right?
Right.
And then immediately after Springer was over, it was the day that I fully understood how the local news in Atlanta got down, because the local news everywhere gets down in different places. It has little wrinkles. So like in California, the local news wrinkle, I mean, I don't know about Northern California, but I know in LA, it's car chases, right? Absolutely. Like they always got a helicopter up there ready for a car chase. I've never been anywhere else where they just always got car chases on the news. But the wrinkle in Atlanta is people from Atlanta. And the lead story on the news before we went out was about somebody trying to set it off at Chuck E. Cheese. They tried to run up on the Chuck E. Cheese before they opened. I think they were trying to get there like right before the armored truck, but while the money was getting prepared to come out, and I don't think it worked out very well. I'm assuming that because you wouldn't be. In fact, they couldn't have been trying to rob the armored truck because nobody died. Like you try to rob the armored truck, somebody's going to die.
Right. You're going to shoot it out. To your point, I lived in Atlanta for a couple years, and I think one of the stories that most typifies that experience was in Duluth. They had Applebee's, and it was one of them Falcons-Saints games, and people had gathered in the Applebee's to watch the game, and you know how the Falcons and Saints rivalry get. Yes. Some people might get a little talkative. One brother from New Orleans, goes out to his car, comes back, and starts capping people in the parking lot. And you can actually look this story up. If you just do Duluth, Saints, and Applebee's, you can find out what happened. But I was like, oh, okay, that's how Atlanta gets down, bro.
Yo, let me tell you, talk about that, look it up. One day, I decided I was going to look up that Chuck E. Cheese story, right?
Oh,
no. Unfortunately, it was a lot harder to find than I thought because apparently attempting to rob a Chuck E. Cheese is a bit more common in Atlanta than I had presumed. I figured that I would Google about these dudes who tried to rob the Chuck E. Cheese, and the number one entry would be that one. But over the span of the 24 years or so since that first Chuck E. Cheese robbery, others have dared to try to rob the Chuck E. Cheese. And here's the thing to me about that I'm going to rob Chuck E. Cheese thing. And I feel you. You're going to try to rob Chuck E. Cheese. It makes sense. But let me tell you who does not do the hiring at Chuck E. Cheese. Charles Entertainment Cheese. He is not the person who does the hiring. The person who does the hiring at Chuck E. Cheese is somebody in Atlanta. And you know who they hiring? People in Atlanta. And you know what that means? Somebody probably brought that thing with them to work, especially if they heard the cats be out here trying to rob the Chuck E. Cheese.
I mean, yeah, man. I did not know that the Chuck E. Cheese was considered the mark, like the Jared Sorensen of of restaurants or casual eateries, because what about it? I mean, they got a lot of coins in there, but it just doesn't seem like you can really hit for a decent lick out of there. But maybe that's the point. Maybe
well, I think part of the point is nobody would expect you to rob a Chuck E. Cheese because who would do such a thing? But I do imagine, especially considering this is the 90s, so they got the money for the pizzas, but as you say, the coins, they got the money for all the stuff that's on the floor. And I mean, look, I got to say, this is just me, okay? Whenever you hear about somebody like robbing a bank, right? Like, yo, give me the money. They got, give me everything in the drawer. They don't really mean everything in the drawer. They just mean the bills. Like, you don't never see no reenactment of no bank robbery, and them dudes is like, give me that roll of quarters, too. All them rolls of quarters. Can you imagine how tired your arms would be walking out with the haul of change from Chuck E. Cheese?
Man, look, I had a coin-operated washer and dryer as recently as 10 months ago. And getting a whole bunch of quarters is actually, it's hard. Like you got to like make a special, get a little bag for it or whatever. It's not easy. So imagine trying to fill a sack of quarters. You're going to have to bring some people with some real muscle with you. You know what I'm saying? Maybe a little big. It might be a little too easily identifiable if you're going to try to pull that scam.
There been some dude out here buying everything with a handful of change. Right? Like, as soon as you steal the money, man, you got to go blow it on some stuff and lay low with it, right? So you out here trying to buy whatever. Like y'all go celebrate. You going to go to the liquor store and get you a bottle of Remy to VSOP. You know what I'm saying? Paying for it with a bag of quarters and dimes.
Well, I'm saying it's kind of funny because you would steal the quarters out of Chuck E. Cheese, and I immediately think, all right, well, how am I going to use these quarters? Well, I guess I got to try to find an arcade You know what I'm saying? You just left the arcade. So, yeah,
they're going to track you down from the Coinstar. You're going to take your happy ass in there with all that change and pour it into the Coinstar.
I'm so hype on Double Dragon, and all of a sudden, they came in on me. Yeah.
Yeah, how in the world we got there, I don't know. The reason we have you here is Slow Burn Season 6. I believe it is debuting November the 3rd is the date, I believe. Does this sound familiar? You got one device that lets you catch the game live, another that lets you stream your favorite shows, you're watching sports highlights on your phone, and you've got your neighbor's best friend's login for the good stuff. Well, I want to tell you about a simple way to get all that entertainment you love without the hassle, and a great way to finally get your TV together. It's called DirecTV Stream, and it brings your live TV and on-demand favorites together like never before, so you can watch your favorite sports, movies, and shows all in one place. That means no more juggling remotes and no need to buy another device ever again. And the best part? There's no annual contract. So get rid of the clutter and the confusion and get your TV together with DirecTV Stream. You can learn more at directtv.com. That's directtv.com. Compatible device required. Content varies by package. Gatorade knows there's no one path an athlete takes to unlock their true greatness. For DK Metcalf, greatness starts with an early morning grind, going hard when everybody else wants to quit. For world record-breaking track star Sydney McLaughlin, it's all about setting a goal and working hard every day to shatter it. And for Jason Tatum, greatness starts with giving everything to live up to the legends that came before him. Whatever path you take to greatness, Gatorade's proven formula is there to help you fuel it. Greatness starts with G.
That would be, if I have my dates right, today.
Yes.
We're recording. We're recording.
That's why I said November 3rd. That's why I said November 3rd.
November 3rd. Okay, yeah, right.
Give them the day. Wednesday, November the 3rd.
Wednesday, November 3rd. Yeah, in wherever you listen to podcasts. If you listen to podcasts, it will be in that feed under Slow Burn. Yes, sir.
All right. Now, the last Slow Burn was the last one. No, the last one was the Al Qaeda one, right?
Yes, right. That's the lead up to the Iraq War. There you go. Yes,
got it. Okay, that one I have not been able to check out. The one before it though, Josh Levin doing the joint on David Duke is an incredible piece of work. Because basically what he did was he just did a podcast on Donald Trump. It's just not about Donald Trump. It's about David Duke, but it is absolutely about Donald Trump. And it's like the moment that it hits you that's what's going on, you're like, oh, okay. And it had the late great Edwin Edwards. You have taken on an incredible topic here with season 6, which is the Los Angeles. Some people call it riot, some people call it uprising, some people call it rebellion. Either way, it happened in 1992 after Rodney King was beaten and then the cops were acquitted. So, like, this had to be, and I guess you're still doing it, but I mean, this has got to be just wild, daunting, and challenging, also kind of fun.
Yeah, and that's the thing about it is that, I mean, for such a somber, terrible, catastrophic event, it actually is a lot of fun because it has all these different things. And like I always say, this came up when I was working on season 3 of Slow Burn, which was about Biggie and Pac, because in episode 2, we cover how law enforcement all around the country, but particularly in LA and South Central, just ramped up its offense against these black communities or whatever. And of course, all of that fuels the birth and explosion of so-called gangster rap, like, fuck police, Cube, all that good stuff. And so I'm, in the middle of looking at all that, I'm like, man, there's a lot of material here. Like, there's just a lot of stuff that, not even that I didn't know or that's just been sort of undercovered. And in the course of doing that, I just kind of put a bookmark in it. I was like, you know what? If I ever get a chance to work on a big story, because I didn't get a chance to pick the season of Biggie and Tupac. That season was already chosen, and then I got to be the host. This was something that I really, really wanted to do. And, I think when I picked it up, I thought also, man, I'll do a lot of reporting. I'll be in and out of LA a little bit, I'll be down there every now and again. And the pandemic kind of, worked against me on that. But, yeah, man, this is something.
Hold on. Pandemic ain't stop you from running up on the white folks at their cribs, though. You think I ain't going to talk about that? Like, Joe took it down to South. When you down there in California having people wasn't answering your calls, so you had to show up at the crib?
Yeah. That's right. Yeah, you're right. I did take one trip in June. I spent a lot of time in Riverside County and Anaheim County. So it wasn't really LA, but yes, I did have to knock on a judge's door in Manhattan Beach. Not very many of us out there in Manhattan Beach. You know what I'm saying? I did not get an answer. I left a letter. And as to date, I've not heard from Judge Joyce Carlin. But if she happens to be a Right Time fan, we still would love to talk to you.
Yeah, see, you got that actual like journalist reporter spirit about you. Because one reason I could not do the job that you can do is I get a little nervous about talking to strangers. You know what I'm saying? Like that ain't really my bag. You be at their cribs, right? Who was it, Josh Rosen daddy that tried to call the people on you?
Manhattan Beach again too, by the way. I went to Manhattan Beach trying to get Josh Rosen because UCLA wouldn't let us talk to him, and I'm just thinking this is regular. This is what reporting is. I get to knock on your door. Apparently, Mr. Rosen doesn't feel quite the same way, and I thought he was calling the police on me, but he was calling the UCLA sports information director on me. But yeah, man, I don't know if I find it easier to talk to strangers, but the stakes are so much lower to me. Mm-hmm. When you're talking to somebody and somebody you care about, like, I don't know, like that just takes a lot more energy for me. But when I'm talking to somebody, I can just kind of go into autopilot. But I got a lot of experience with that. I mean, I'm an introvert by nature, but this part of it helps me to learn how to, deal with folks. And was raised as an only child. So all this, so I don't know what it is about this field that really appealed to me, but I just get to go to people's houses or call them on the phone and they'll tell me stuff about their life. And like, that's the part of writing and journalism that I really still enjoy.
Yeah, so part I think about, though, is that, like, 2021, people don't just knock on doors like that no more. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not, like, people don't knock on doors like that no more. You don't get phone calls from people that you don't know who it is because you don't answer it if you don't see it. Like, I'm trying to imagine now, like, if you knocked on my door and it turned out that you were just a reporter, I'd be like, oh, woo, man. And it ain't about me. It's about something else. Oh, okay, yeah, all right.
Right.
Don't come inside, though. We're going to talk about it on the poach.
Right. Bill collect type joint. Nah, man, you're right. Like, I can't think of the last time somebody random just showed up at my door. Actually, somebody tried to sell me a newspaper subscription a year and a half ago, and it was a scam because I never did get that paper, but whatever. I'll let that brother make it. But yeah, man, I love, knocking on doors and, people, it is discombobulating. Like, I feel like that's one way to sort of disarm people when you show up at their home. And they're maybe their guard is up initially, but if people see that you're willing to make the effort to meet them where they are, surprisingly, people will be willing to talk to you. I'm not that kind of person. If you showed up to my house and said you want to talk about something, I'd be like, show me a business card, give me your email, and I'll do some research and I'll get back to you. But more often than not, thank God, people will welcome me in and let me talk to them.
So how's the process work for something like this? Like, once you start, because this is a broad topic, the LA riots of 1992. Okay, so how do you start something like this?
Well, in terms of storytelling, the start was really easy for us. Like, it was the Rodney King beating and the George Holliday filming that beating. Like, that was real easy to get our arms around it. And so we're still making storytelling choices, but we're probably going to end right at the tail end of the riot. So to me, there was sort of like a defined timeline, even though there's all these other impacts and all these other things that happened after. Like, there was a mayoral election, there was a presidential election, all these other things. But in terms of storytelling, that part of it was easy. But in terms of like what to read, what to watch, all the things I had to consume to get my heads around it, I mean, man, I wish I could show you my desk here. I've got like 20 books here, like 10 in Kindle that I've had to read, all these articles. People have all these different accounts of like what happened that day. And it's really, really overwhelming, but it's a lot of fun. Like, I never thought I would enjoy reading the Daryl Gates autobiography. You know what I mean? Like, I had to order a Playboy with a Daryl Gates interview from 1991. That sort of stuff. Like, that stuff is like this, the feeling of discovery is really interesting to me because I had this perception and this idea of what happened during that particular time in Los Angeles, and reading about it confirmed some of those priors, but also it just was really insightful to hear how people experience it for themselves too.
Well, I was actually thinking about that because with the riots hit, I think you were in like 8th grade, right? I was in 7th grade when this happens. And
I was 7. What grade were you in again?
I was in the 7th grade.
Okay. So I would have either been, are you talking about the riots or are you talking about the tape?
The riots.
Okay, there you go. Then you're right. I was in 8th grade then. All right. Uh-huh.
Yeah. And so it's interesting for me, like I found when we did like the OJ revisiting, for example, where I think we were both at an age where we were obviously children, but we didn't fully understand that, right? Like, we thought we got what was going on. This seemed, it's got to be, I think I'm just curious about what it is like for you going back on these things that you did live through, but probably didn't fully understand at the time, right? Like the discovery process you talk about.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's a few things that happened. One, just LA had a black mayor at the time, Tom Bradley, and him trying to get his arms around what was essentially an unaccountable militaristic force within his own city is like a dynamic that is familiar to all of us now. Like, if we read the news and we see like how politics work at local levels, even nationally, like if you just want to sort of draw a parallel to President Obama and like trying to convince white people to do things or trying to assert your authority and them being like, nah, you ain't really in charge though. Like there's a lot of that kind of stuff, that sort of sense of discovery. And another thing, I mean, to be honest, I mean, we talk about Rodney King all the time, but what really stuck in my mind from that time was the Latasha Harlan shooting, man. And I don't know if a lot of people know about that, but it was a 15-year-old girl. She was shot by a convenience store owner in South Central Los Angeles in the back of the head for allegedly, she was the woman accused her of stealing orange juice. That's not what happened. But like, to viscerally see these things, like the beating of Rodney King, the shooting of Latasha Harlan, that always really left an impression on me. I was like, is that how the world works for real? Like, you could just get killed as a 15-year-old? Somebody can pull out a gun and shoot you in the back of the head and nothing really happened to you? Or the police can surround you and beat you up like that on camera and nobody really seems to pay a price for it? Although later they did. But yeah, it just, that part of it, that sense of discovery, reading about all that stuff and how these things happened, in the build up to it. I didn't know any of that stuff, but how would we have, Bo? I mean, what news consumption was like back then. Like maybe you saw it on, if it was really big, it hit 2020 or 60 Minutes. But I mean, nationally, it wasn't that big a deal. So like, there was no way for us to sort of know what the LA Times and KTLA and all these other people were saying about those things at the time. And like that part of it is like really interesting to me.
Yeah, and I think when the verdict came down, you and I had not lived long enough to entertain the possibility that there might be an acquittal, right? This didn't seem like a trial that required I follow it, right? Like, I didn't know what the day-to-day was.
Well, what did you think? Like, because you grew up so different from other folks, right? Like your folks are like in the movement folks. So I mean, I can only imagine like what their response was to it. Like, this is America. I just imagined like.
I got to be careful saying what my daddy's response was when all that stuff broke out. Let's just say there was an understanding of the anger from the patriarch of the Jones household. But I never thought that there was a way in the world. Like, there was a tape. It was right there. And like, and I think in my thoughts on this time, I did not realize as it happened, because I was too young as it happened to fully get like the impact of the police when it came out. Because it comes out in 1988, right? And I guess to me, the idea of police brutality had always felt ubiquitous. Like, it's just something that, went on. I thought that we just kind of knew about this. I didn't really have a grasp on how that, for a whole different generation, like, let people know, hey, they were out here beating people up. And then that made 92 seem like, it made 88 seem like prophecy, even though it was just kind of, this is how stuff is all the time.
Right. It's interesting because you grew up in one way with a certain group of folks, and I grew up with, folks that, I don't know how to say it, but, they're children of the Jim Crow South. So they're skeptical of the police, but they also kind of like, as a kid, I'm thinking, well, they're saying F the police or whatever, but, and police probably are bad, but, those are the kind of dudes they would be with the police. You know what I'm saying? Like, those, that's an interaction that they've, a bargain that they've already made by the lives they're living. I'm thinking this at like, 10, 11, 12 years old. Cause I'm like, why would the police just beat people up for no reason?
Right.
I didn't have a better understanding of the world. And it's not like my parents had either the language or even necessarily the experience. Like, to them, they just grew up in a world where all white people were bad and police were just some of them. You know what I'm saying? But not the police in particular. And that's something that you had to learn on your own. And so like the video and the subsequent riots for that were like sort of revelatory. And yeah, then you understand that music because like I don't know about you, but at that time, like Ice Cube was probably my favorite rapper. Like up until Bootlegs and B-Sides, like he probably was my favorite rapper, solo rapper. And like we had to tear this mother, you know what I'm saying? Like that was like one of my joints. And I was like, okay, now I understand the rage. But like if the police didn't hit me in quite the same way until, like you said, we saw that video and we saw the trial and we're just like, oh, wait a minute, this system is kind of really messed up.
Yeah, it's like, oh, y'all mean it. Like yes. This ain't just something. This ain't just something for y'all to say. Like, oh, wait, you guys, like, there's a serious level of animus here between you and the local law enforcement operation.
Yeah, there's a legitimate reason. And did you watch the NWA biopic with a few years ago?
Yes.
And they had the scene. Well, I can look at your face. You must not enjoyed it that much. But
it's not that I didn't enjoy it, right? But there was just stuff in there. They were like, time, what is time? Yes, someone is going to be at this NWA concert in 1988 with a Rodney Hampton Giants jersey on. Never mind that Rodney Hampton didn't get drafted until 1990. It's that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it was kind of, yeah, right. But then, you see that scene when they're a group with the police. And I'm like, oh, yes. They actually experienced some of this. I was like, I get it. It wasn't just... I think like CB4, which was a take on, sort of the NWA and West Coast gangster stuff. Like you're thinking, oh, this is just to sell albums. Like they didn't really experience it. They're just whatever. But no, like a lot of young black men, particularly at that time, particularly in LA, they actually did have this experience with police. And so it means hearing that music today, it even sounds different to the ear. I'm like, okay, they're actually talking about some stuff that like they really experienced, Yeah.
I would also note though, the story behind what made them do the police is awkward for me because apparently they were riding around shooting at people with paintball guns, just running up on people, at which point the cops ran up on them. And on a scale of 1 to 10 of egregious police behavior, that's left to 5, right? Like, I mean, that's y'all's kind of tripping, I'm glad you were able to channel that and to actually make a coherent statement. But if it had started out with me and the homies riding with the paintball, it would not have gone over the same way.
Right. I mean, I kind of feel like, maybe in, by today's verbiage, the way we think of it, maybe we would have liked to have seen community intervention and that the police didn't have to be involved and we can do some sort of restorative justice within the community. But yeah, I was like, hey, man, y'all know y'all were tripping, though. You know what I'm saying? Somebody was going to have to stop y'all from doing that because y'all wasn't going to just realize it was wrong all on your own.
So in going through the story and, like, the riots themselves, I'm curious how much you guys plan to or have been able to get into just the levels of segregation in Los Angeles. Because I know one detail that people from L.A. bring up about the riots that is always worth noting, which is cops lining up along I-10. Along Interstate 10 running east-west through L.A., which is the line in L.A. Those are the tracks, for lack of a better term, in Los Angeles. And the cops lining up to make sure wherever the damage took place, it was not going to happen north of the 10.
It's over there, right? Yeah, we could definitely get into some of that. I mean, one of the things that, like, and I don't know if all the information that I have, I can't put it all into the podcast. But, like, for instance, like Watts, in the 20s, 30s, a white neighborhood, that was a white area, right? As soon as these black folks coming from the South trying to find, LA, trying to, free themselves of the shackles of the Jim Crow South, and they start moving into Watts where there's more affordable housing, and they're thinking about municipalizing, like having their own government. LA annexes them, brings them in because there's no way that black people should be able to govern themselves, right? So yeah, we get a lot into that and like how South Central ended up the way that it did. That's not by accident. Like that's where people were redlined into those neighborhoods, and that's like, as a result, it made it easier for the police to keep up with them and to police them and to put their resources there. And you have all this stuff going on for years and years and years. Just black folks just taking this stuff, being isolated from the wealthier parts of town, isolated from resources. They're over policed, and so yeah, like segregation is a story in every town in this country. Like there's not, I always say, because I used to be a reporter when I would go out all the time, and I'd be, no matter where you go in this country, from Seattle to Key West, there's some black people mad about how the white people in their town are treating them. but it is very much a piece of this story about how the segregation really exacerbated a lot of the tensions here because, eventually their segregation bore the fruit. And a lot of that was those, unrest, and all those other things that went on. So, yeah.
Did you, in the course of your research, come across this book called City of Quartz?
Yes, Mike Davis. Yes.
Okay. I never got to the end of City of Quartz. I read about half of it, right? It's excellent. I just one of those that I just did not get to the end of.
Oh, where they talk about people moving out to the desert and starting communities and stuff like that?
Yeah.
That's early in the book, but yes.
Yeah, but there are two things that stuck out about that book. It's kind of a neo-Marxist look at the building of Los Angeles, right? Mm-hmm. But two observations I took from it that'll always stick with me. One is that LA is just a collection of gangs. It's a collection. Everybody came there from these far-flung places, and they click up with whoever the people are and whatever level it was. Like, gang life in Los Angeles makes a lot more sense when you realize everybody else is a gang. It just don't sound like it because it's like the Armenians, the Guatemalans, the Jews, the people who work here, the people. You understand what I'm,
the Koreans, yeah, just
right,
absolutely,
exactly.
Yeah.
And so black people, who have left their family structures, everything else, don't have anything institutional to lean on. And what brings them together, black is a little bit flimsy when you think about it as an actual tie that binds. And so, yeah, gangs pop up. You would expect that. But the other thing I'll never forget about that book that I did not realize about California was LA was sold by pamphlet. Like, the growth of Los Angeles came back in the days where they would put advertisements in magazines and send out pamphlets and stuff about, come check out this place. And people really would pack up all their shit and move based on what they had been reading in these advertisements in magazines. Like when you watch commercials, like it's better in the Bahamas commercials they used to run back in the day. Yeah. Not to go vacation, though. People will watch it like doing that and then moving. But they told the white people it wasn't no black people there. That was a huge selling point is that California and Los Angeles specifically was an all-white paradise. That you're going to get out here, it's going to be beaches, it's going to be palm trees, it's going to be all these things, there's going to be no black people. That's why you got all these people moving from the Midwest, like Beverly Hills 90210. We moved from Minnesota to L.A. Hell, the Minnesota Lakers moving from there to L.A. Like, that was the story. And then you can't do nothing like that and think we not about to show up. We heard about it too.
Right. We like sunshine. We like temperate climates. You know what I'm saying?
Right. This land. And that's where that part in The Warmth of Other Suns, to me, the most heartbreaking part of The Warmth of Other Suns by Isabel Wiggerson is when old buddy's trying to get that room in Arizona. He moving from Atlanta, drive all the way across there to move to LA, and he gets to Arizona, and nobody will give him a room, and he comes to this one hotel, and the guy says, look, I would love to give you a room. I'm from Illinois. I see things differently than these people do down here, but if I give you a room, they're going to put me out of business. But I need to tell you something. I went to USC, and this what you think you going to is not what you're going to. And that's what happened to all these black people. They moved on a promise that was reasonable because they're like, we get out the South. Everything going to be okay, right? No. Right. No, it won't.
And maybe there was a little bit more freedom of movement. Maybe there was an opportunity at property ownership that they did not have back home. But yeah, the fundamentals were basically the same. You know, was that Dr. Foster? That's the guy we're thinking of. They came from Monroe, Louisiana. Yeah, man. I mean, so it's funny you said that about the way that they sold it as a white man's paradise because I mean, one thing that comes up over and over again is that through maybe the 30s. People called California, Los Angeles in particular, Iowa on the Pacific, right? All those people from the Midwest. It's very conservative culture with all these people that wanted to avail themselves of the climate and all these new opportunities or whatever. And as soon as black people show up, it's not quite as cool. And then, I mean, just think about the immigration from after the Immigration Act in 1965, the migration of Mexican immigrants into the country. Like, we were ruining their paradise, man. You know what I'm saying? Like, those white people, we didn't sign up for this. We could have stayed in Iowa. We didn't want to be around black people, So
they would trade the beach for the snow if we wasn't there.
Right. Yeah. They were like, we didn't want that. And so, like, that is a part of how LAPD is empowered to, like, wield this power over people. Because they're like, hey, man, you better get these brown people under control. I ain't signed up for all of this, bro. And they were so fortunate that they had people in the visage of Bill Parker, who is a legendary policing figure. Like, I don't know if Bomani, do you think people know what Dragnet is anymore? Like that's too old.
No, they don't.
Yeah.
Man, we're old.
I mean, we are.
How about
old.
this? How about this? The Dragnet movie, which was at the time about the old TV show, is now the old Dragnet movie.
Oh God, yeah, man. I mean, Dragnet was a very popular, one of the most popular TV shows in the 50s and 60s, and it springs from the mind of Bill Parker, who was the LAPD chief for 16 years, from 1950 to 1966, and it did a real great job in selling, the LAPD is like this very noble organization, people that protect and serve. And Bill Parker is also the person that came up with the term, the thin blue line, right? So there's this real belief that like, hey, if not for us, if not for LAPD, these hordes of brown and black people are going to come get y'all, bro. And so they empowered him to do a lot of bad things to preserve that image of LA that everybody had been sold in the first place.
Right, and then the police chief in the 90s and well before that, Daryl Gates, his OG is Bill Parker. Yes. And I think in line with what I was telling you for City of Courts, OG is the right term to use. But that's where Daryl Gates got his game. And the LAPD, I think people saw a lot of this stuff in the O.J. Made in America film that Ezra Edelman did. But it is worth noting that they weren't just looking for police officers to deal with all the black and brown people. They were specifically recruiting in the South. To get officers, honestly, who had the spirit that was necessary for what they were asking.
So in at least, and I don't want to credit this too much, but like there were at least two accounts I've heard, read and one heard, that Bill Parker himself recruited officers from KKK meetings in the South. You know what I mean? So like that's the kind of anybody you ask, like people will waffle on whether or not Daryl Gates is racist or whatever, right? But, whatever. It doesn't matter. We can talk about the impact, right? Bill Parker, people don't waffle on that. They're like, no, that dude was a stone cold racist. The only person that doesn't agree, at least publicly, is Daryl Gates, okay? Because that reflects poorly on him, right? But yeah, I mean, that's the kind of mentality them folks had, man, that, they did that. And the impact of the LAPD, I can't emphasize enough, on the rest of the policing profession has been tremendous. Like they sent people out. People that worked under Bill Parker went on to become police chiefs in Dallas and Fort Worth, Beverly Hills, Pasadena. Many of his other deputies spread out all across the country. So the LAPD style of policing has like been nationalized, really, in the last half century or whatever. And a lot of it comes from Bill Parker and Daryl Gates, who, like you said, Daryl Gates was, I guess it was his little homie. You got your OG, you got your little homie, and that's who Daryl Gates was.
Yeah, no, like there's so much to this. Like I almost like talking about like the riots themselves just almost feels secondary, right? Because that's just a thing. It, like the aftermath, of course, though, and I think is the cruelest part that gets lost in this is after all that stuff burned down, wasn't nobody there to help. To do no rebuilding. There was no empathy offered, no understanding of any of that stuff. Like, and what I don't know about LA because I don't know it well enough, but like you can go to Miami and go to places where after the McDuffie riots in 1980, you can see they're there and ain't nothing happened, right? Like they look just like they did 40 years ago when that went down. And LA, and I feel like in a lot of places, it never came back because nobody wanted to put in the work to do it.
It fundamentally changed. I will say I went to LA for the first time in my life when I was a freshman in college to visit a friend. And we took a road trip down with some of our boys. We went down from Stanford to LA. And I remember, this is what, 97? Yeah, 97. So LA, like in those parts we're talking about, total like devastation. Like it looked like it had just, like the fires had just started, going out. That somebody had just put it out. And I know that like there have been some improvements. I mean, LA has very expensive real estate. So, things have changed a little bit. But fundamentally, in terms of the people in the communities, like that was ruined forever as a result of this. And it's funny you said that, Bo, because if you go back to the 65 Watts riots, there was a real effort to try to address some of the wrongs and some of the conditions. Like they came up with programs, jobs programs, put money into it, started a community theater, all that stuff. But people didn't have like the passion or there were no resources to sustain it. And so it fell apart. And they were like, well, man, what a waste of time. So you could see that certainly influencing what happened in 92 and 93 when they like, why give these people money anyway? It's going to go to waste. We don't really want to do this anyway. And so people can just sort of walk away from it.
Now, are there some figures that you came across in your research that you were just unaware of before starting this? Like, kind of like my man was named Chico Del Vey in the
Chico Del Vey, yeah, my boy.
Yeah. So have you come across anybody like that?
Well, yeah. I mean, there are a couple. Man, I'm trying to say, do I want to say who it is? Well, I mean, one thing about it is like Rodney King's family to me was a total mystery, and like the people that hung out with him. And I think we talked about this a little bit before, that like Rodney King was a joke to us growing up. That he was kind of set up as like a comedic figure. Can we all just get along? And he didn't seem very bright and all that stuff. He wasn't, necessarily the most articulate on the mic, right, at that time. So people made a joke of him. It was real easy to do that. But for us, what I wanted to do was humanize him. Like, I was like, let me revisit this and talk to the people that are close to him. And, I mean, like, learning about him has been sort of revelatory. Like, it's funny to say, you asked me, have I learned about people? And there's a lot of others, like Latasha Harlins' family, like that story, like revisiting that is like terrible. But the discovery process of learning about Rodney King and the people that were around him and that tried to help him hold it together after the beating, to me, was like, I was learning about a new person, essentially. Because there's the guy that got beat on camera, the guy that was a joke, the guy that was on Celebrity Rehab, with Dr. Drew, about 15 years ago. But like learning about who he was, how gentle he was, how troubled he was. And I don't mean that it's like to levy judgment against him, but to say that like he really had a very difficult life before and after the beating. So like just like learning about him on that, like that was like the big deal for me. But there's, plenty of other people that have popped up. The people that, that I spoke to that helped to put the tape on CNN and help the story blow up. Like, you don't even think about people like that when you're growing up, because there's no reason this would have been a national story at the time. But there are people that were in place that helped it to become a national story. And we talked to a lot of them. And yeah, man, it's just, I mean, we're not done, but that's the thing. You know what I'm saying? Like there's no trophy to give out right now. I'm not done. I'm at the finish line. There's still people to talk to, but like that piece of it has been like really, really fun, like in revelatory, learning about, the people that you think we know a lot about, but that don't actually.
That thought about Rodney King being a joke, I hadn't really given that a lot of thought until you mentioned it right there, because it's funny. The Ice Cube line that, I mean, objectively speaking, might be one of the best Ice Cube lines ever. So Charlie Manson, I pull him out of truck, hit him with a brick, and I'm dancing.
Yeah.
I'm dancing.
Yeah.
What an incredible.
We know that's a terrible line, but we were like, yo, that went though. I was like,
yo, but here's the thing though.
Yeah.
That part where you said right there, we know that it's a terrible line because it's obviously a takeoff of Reginald Denny, hashtag White Reggie, being pulled out of his truck, right? And when we talk about Reginald Denny getting beat and that line comes, we're like, oh yeah, I know, terrible line. But that is not, we never recoiled in any way in talking about Rodney King after he was beaten by the state. Like, we asked questions about whether or not he had it coming, or we don't know what happened before the tape, but we all know, hey, what happened to Reginald Denny was messed up. Everybody gonna lead with that. And it was a judgment call on whether you led with that about Rodney King.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think maybe in part of it is that we've just come to accept that, like, the police get that sort of impunity, that they can beat the hell out of us, and that's the way of the world. And to see, like, black people respond in that way, like, I think we're acculturated to the idea that black people are supposed to be forgiving and not raise a fuss, and we're supposed to accept racism on the chin and keep it moving. And like that happened to Reginald Denny is not the example of that, and that was jarring to people, that black people might get mad. That has always been the fear of like black rebellion or whatever. And so yeah, it was really, really jarring, and it was jarring to Rodney King. Like Rodney King, who got his ass beat. Like, that's why he was moved to say something in the first place, because he was like, man, that was wrong what y'all did to Reginald Denny. The dude who got beat, you know what I'm saying? So I think it was a real inflection point in the way people even viewed the uprising, and whether or not you think of it as like a remorseless, stupid bloodletting, or like a rebellion of people that have been oppressed for far too long.
Yeah, that was like, hey, man, come on, dog. He was just trying to, he clearly doesn't want to be here.
I mean, so there's been a lot of talk about that, right? And like Rodney King actually did, bro. I mean, can I say this? I'm gonna go ahead and say it. I talked to his brother yesterday, like literally yesterday, and that was the first time I got his brother on the phone. And he was like, man, Rodney wasn't even really that mad at the cops. He said after it was all over. He said he wasn't even really mad. He was more mad about the Reginald Denny thing, and he was more mad about the cops getting off. But like after the ass beating, he was just like, I forgive people. That was the Rodney King thing, and he really did want to speak to people about it, and it just kind of came out a little weird. They gave him a prepared speech, and he threw it away and did his thing, which actually, has resonated far longer than anything he probably would have said in a prepared statement that day.
Yeah, it resonated more, but like, don't nobody take Rodney King's "Can we all get along" as a mantra for us to follow. People laughed. Like, yo, he just caught the L at every turn. He tried to unify the city. We was like, I did. Can we all get along? No.
Yeah, so many more of us were on the Ice Cube tip than on the Rodney King tip. You know what I'm saying? It's like, hey, man, you should. I mean, I don't know, at that time, there was a rumor, maybe we were just coming up with rumors where, people had said Reginald Denny rolled his window down and was calling people the N-word and stuff. It was that kind of like misinformation.
No, he wasn't.
To justify what had happened. And it was like, nah, that's not quite what happened, bro. Sorry,
let me tell you something. If Reginald Denny had actually done that, I might have to give him some props for being the bravest man in the world, right? Like, or he must have already concluded, I am going to die tonight. Like, he must have made that decision before, if he would actually done that, right? And he probably rolled down his window and said, Tommy don't want y'all to wear his clothes. How about
Timberland?
That?
Right. You know what I'm saying? Timberland don't want your business neither. Yeah. No, man. But of course, that was all of us just trying to come up with the reason to make it less terrible. Like maybe he deserved it, but nah, not quite. But yeah, you make a great point, man, that like not a lot of people evaluated. Like we made a joke of Rodney King getting his ass beat. Ralph Wiley, somebody we both really admire. I remember reading one of his essays as a kid, and he talked about that like the way that people responded to Reginald Denny, and it was just like, did y'all just miss what happened to Rodney King? Like, why are you so outraged about this and not Rodney King? And that's still a good question to ask even to this day.
Yeah, man. So how many episodes are we going to have by the end of this?
So we got 8, and we're going to drop them every Wednesday. And every Wednesday, in addition to that episode, there'll be a Slate plus bonus episode with me and the producer, Jason DeLeon. We'll be talking about, what happened behind that episode, and then there'll be an interview. And I guess I can go ahead and say, like, the first one that comes out today, on November 3rd, we'll have our interview with George Holliday, who recorded the tape. And he actually, we had to have had one of the last interviews with him because he died of COVID just in September. But we talked to him for like 2 hours, and so that'll be on one of the Slate bonus episodes that comes out tomorrow too, or November 3rd. That comes out November 3rd.
You gonna catch up with Reginald Denny and play Natural Born Killers for him?
Man, dog, come on, man. Reginald, look, if you too are a Right Time listener, I would love to talk to you. We have not got that far in the process yet, but just know that I'm looking for you, my brother. Yeah, I'm not gonna play no Natural Born Killers for him. Dog. Ice Cube's politics, kind of. In retrospect.
Pull him out the truck, hit him with a brick, and I'm dancing. It was the dancing that was just like, of all things.
And wait, but Bomani, bro did dance. You remember it was just like, man.
I know.
Man. I'm ashamed for thinking that was dope.
I'm trying to imagine what it had to be like, just being like a regular black person living in LA who, while bothered, did not feel like burning things, right? like, what are you, like, I remember my daddy, like, so my parents are of similar sensibilities, but different temperaments, right? So my mother attended the March on Washington. My father thought it was a bit of a sellout. They had not met by this time, just to be clear. Okay. But my pops thought it was a bit of a sellout move to be asking a man for permission and then go up there. You know what I'm saying? So, like, there's always levels in how everything goes. But when these cats is out here burning it down, and you mad, but you like, but nah, man, that ain't really my bag. You know what I'm saying? That's not really what I'm going. That's not really what I'm going to do, sucker.
I know, right? Well, where am I going to get my groceries? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, right.
Get my groceries now.
Right. Who's the black person in the neighborhood that's the equivalent of, if y'all protest on the freeway, how I'm supposed to get to work? Because they there.
Oh, there's not, and it's not an insignificant number of folks too. And we've talked to some folks and read about some folks that, like there were a lot of people that like, nah, that was crazy though, for real. Nah, y'all didn't need to do all that. And I guess reasonable people can disagree.
Yeah, let me tell you what I found, though, of folks from L.A. of a certain age, especially if they was teenagers at that time. Let them tell it. All of them came up on free stuff, right?
Oh,
It's kind of like the first episode of the Boondocks where Grandpa is pretending like he was out here participating in the movement.
Yeah.
And in reality, he had left to go get his raincoat.
Yeah, it's like it's like people that were like at the Wilt Chamberlain 100-point game. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, man, I copped everything, bro. I got a Sega Genesis. I got some new Jordans. You know what I'm saying? We've got some bread, all of that. You know, and so it's like, nah, I don't. Yeah. I mean, you're right. Shoot, I'm gonna say actually in terms of the black folks we've spoken to, I'm gonna say all of them, one way or another, say that they copped something during the unrest. I can't verify that for sure, but they say they did.
Right, and one thing I didn't get to because we're running out of time, but I imagine there must be some exploration of the interaction between the Afro-Americans and our Asian brothers and sisters.
Yeah, man, that hits in episode 2 in particular. Excuse me, because that's dealing with the Latasha Harlins episode, and I think I made reference to it a little bit earlier. But so we're going to be getting into that really uncomfortable conversation. Something that is still resonates today, right? Is marginalized communities trying to find common cause and figure out how we gonna make our way in this country. So yeah, man, we had to talk about that. And it's really, I mean, like I said, it turned out to be timely. I didn't plan it this way, but it turned out to be timely.
All right, man. That is Joel Anderson, Slow Burn, Season 6, available right now wherever you get your podcast. I'll tell you, all that representing it could.
Northside ain't really Houston. Northside ain't really Houston.
That's how y'all are, boy. That's how y'all are. You from a city that ain't even called Houston. But ladies and gentlemen, thanks so much for joining us here on The Right Time. We do this 3 times a week. Gabe Bassane, Dave Presley, handle things behind the scenes. Thank you, gentlemen. Thanks for letting me slide there, Joe, because I know what you want to say, but it would not be factual if you did. Remember, follow The Right Time. Rate us, review us, give us 5 stars. You only give us 4 stars. I'm inclined to believe you're a hater like Joe. And we'll talk to you guys in a couple of days.
I just want to
take it easy.
That way.